Hey folks, with the release of 3.16 and all the bounty hunting changes, I'm revisiting the Banu Defender because I think it's a pretty good option for a bounty hunting ship in the new world we're in, where a ship needs to be good both in space and in the atmosphere of moons and planets. I used laser cannons in my previous video of this ship, but I actually prefer repeaters now, so that's what I'll be showing here. So let's get into it. We're starting off on the planet of microTech against a couple Wardens and a Valkyrie. In 3.16, the wingmen are always spawning alongside the primary bounty target, so unless you're confident in your ability to burst down the primary target and get away, you'll need to deal with the wingmen as well. Here, since we've identified that the primary target is a Valkyrie and that the wingmen are the easier to kill Wardens, we're going to take the wingmen out first. The wingmen often close the distance to you before the primary target as well, so you can sometimes pick one or two of them off separate from the larger pack, which is nice. I make a small mistake against this first Warden by trying to strafe horizontally in the air, so it's still able to land some shots thanks to the density of the air slowing my movement. If I'd strafed down towards the ground, then gravity would have pulled me down as well, and I may have been able to preserve my shield. Because of that, I have to boost away and disengage to recharge shield before re-engaging. At this point, I could have made a beeline for the Valkyrie and probably killed it before losing my shields, but the other Warden was showing up close to my radar, so I decided to take them out first. We're using fixed repeaters for our weapons because they do 8% more damage than gimbaled ones, and the Defender is agile enough to be able to aim its guns at whatever it needs to. 8% is getting to the point where I don't want to pay the DPS cost for the gimbaled weapons, but you could if you find they lower your time to kill. Due to the density of the air, we can assume the Warden won't be dodging around too much, so we open fire as soon as they enter the edge of our weapon's range, which is 1540 meters. This time, I do strafe towards the ground so that gravity is helping me maneuver and I'm able to dodge the incoming fire more effectively. The Valkyrie is still about 6k away, so we've done a good job of splitting up our enemies into more manageable groups. It isn't too long before we're able to take out the other Warden as well. I'm skipping ahead to save us time to close the distance, but during this time you'd want to top up your boost and shields if you weren't already maxed. We're picking back up with the Valkyrie here, and again we open fire at max range. We're corkscrewing slightly to avoid incoming fire and then rotate to a position directly above it, giving ourselves the ability to drop down on any side of it while they got to fight gravity close the distance on us. They're close to dead, so I stopped trying to dodge and just face them head on and take them out. They ended up dropping half our shields there, so we have plenty of leeway. And since we've got a ship with lots of shields, we should use them to help us finish the fight more quickly by steadying our aim. This next fight, we target our enemies to see what we're against and see that we've got two Hurricanes. Fighting against multiple Hurricanes in atmosphere is extremely punishing because it's very difficult to avoid their crazy high turret DPS, and they have more hull HP than every other ship and station in the game combined. So in this situation, I suggest launching all your missiles at one of the Hurricanes. In atmosphere, missiles seem to have a really good hit rate, and most of the times I've one-shotted Hurricanes when doing this. If you take out the bounty target, you can then just boost away to your next bounty, and if you just damage it, you might be able to finish it off and then get away. In this next fight, we'll talk a bit about positioning. We check our enemies and see that we're against two Hurricanes and a Valkyrie. So I want to take out the Valkyrie first, but after checking the Hurricane that's near him, I think that could be too much incoming damage since all three of them will converge on me before I can kill one. So I instead cut hard to the left to take on the Hurricane that's separated from the group in hopes of fighting 1v1 or at worst 1v2. You'll also notice that on moons I like flying decoupled since the gravity is lower than on planets, so you don't actually lose altitude that quickly and you gain a bunch of survivability by always being moving. I start engaging this Hurricane and try to corkscrew a bit when I see damage coming my way. We need to protect our shield when we can, so whenever my weapons are recharging I try to make some movements to be a bit harder to hit. And I steady my aim when I'm firing to help me more accurately land my shots. I'm also trying to fly into positions that are above or below this Hurricane so that I can see its larger top or bottom profile to give me a larger target to hit. But sometimes I'll take a relatively head-on engage if it lets me land a bunch of clean damage and my shields are holding. Our decoupled flight and corkscrew maneuvers have helped us avoid a lot of the incoming damage since we've kept our shields up while fighting two Hurricanes simultaneously, so we're able to take one of them out before losing our shields. The shields are almost gone though, so we need to boost away to disengage and recharge before engaging the other Hurricane. If the target Valkyrie was closer, I'd go after them first to just claim the bounty and ignore the last hurricane, but he's far away, so I'll finish off this hurricane that's up my butt first. We're going to use the same strategy that we used before, which are to corkscrew when we see incoming damage to preserve our shields, and to try to maneuver ourselves into a position where we have a better firing line on them. Also, now that we have removed a lot of the incoming DPS, we can be a bit more focused on aiming and a bit less focused on avoiding damage. We'll keep an eye on the radar though, so we'll know if his friend gets closer. I like trying to position myself higher than them so that I'm clear of the ground, and I also keep the ground in my sight, and it lets me drop down using gravity to aid my maneuverability if I need to. It'll also slow down hurricanes trying to fly up past me for a joust, which makes it easier to aim at them. We take out the second hurricane without taking too much shield damage, and so I'll skip the Valkyrie kill because it's not much different than the previous one. In this next video, I'm on a moon against a Warden and 2 Valkyries, and I've flown above them at speed, and I'm dropping down on the other side of them to engage with the Warden first, which is the easiest target. I'm flying decoupled, so I'll need to watch my altitude, but this should give me a chance to safely remove one of the ships off the field. As he's about to fly up past me, I level myself out, and I use my ship's strong bottom thrusters to quickly slow my fall and keep him lined up in front of me. I hear the Valkyrie guns firing and see that I'm taking some damage, so I do a corkscrew while my guns are recharging, but I keep the Vanguard in my sights and unload on him when he's lined up and take him out. I check the bounty target Valkyrie to see if he's in range to quickly take him out and ignore the wingman, but he's still too far and I can hear the other one still shooting at me, so I keep turning around and I decide to lock the wingman instead. Valkyries are pretty easy targets to take out because of how large they are, but they can do a lot of damage to you if you're not careful, so I'm going to try and keep my distance. I can't drop down using gravity because of how close to the ground we are, so I strafe sideways against him. I should have used my bottom thrusters and strafed upwards rather than down because the bottom thrusters are a lot stronger, but the damage is manageable either way, and our shields are high. It isn't too long before we take him out, but also get dangerously close to hitting the ground. Whoops. Our shields are still high though, so we just locate the last Valk target and boost towards them to close the gap, since we don't need much time to recharge for a single Valk. The enemy is pretty low to the ground, and we stay low as well so that they don't fly up chasing after us. Low flying can be helpful to limit the movement of your enemies to make it easier to land shots, but here we're primarily doing it just because it feels super cool. We're flying decoupled less than 1k off the ground, so we need to feather our bottom thrusters, but that's manageable while facing a single enemy. But then we hear ground turrets shooting at us as well, so now it's time to boogie and GTFO. If those turrets get a beat on you, you won't last long in this world. So we clear 2k altitude to outrange them while still dumping bullets into our pincushion friend, who obliges us by chasing straight after us until he explodes. Low flying combat is definitely a lot of fun, but just be careful that you don't end up like this guy, who's someone I've never met and is definitely not me. Lastly, we'll show some combat in space against 2 Valkyries and a Hurricane. In 3.16, lots of bounties will spawn with 4 ships, where one of them is a VHRT class target and the 3 wingmen are in lighter ships, either fighters or medium-sized gunships. I've intentionally not shown those because, in my opinion, they're much easier for the defender to deal with. You just kill the light fighters first and then focus on the bounty VHRT target, since cutties and freelancers shouldn't be able to land a lot of damage on you. If you find that they are, make sure you're not flying straight into the middle of them. Now, back to this fight. The name of the game is going to be defense, since we're up against 3 very high DPS enemies. That's why we're flying decoupled. I generally prefer decoupled flight as a defensive measure and prefer coupled flight as a more offensive measure, especially with more agile ships. We're going after a Valkyrie first, since they're an easier target to take out. We'll keep corkscrewing while also applying our damage, since we need to try to evade incoming fire, and eventually we'll take out one of the Valkyries with half of our shields intact. We go straight for the other Valk next without disengaging to recharge shields. Since our defensive flying style, we should be able to take them out before our shields go down. And even with our capacitor set to max weapons, our shields will slowly creep up as long as they haven't taken fire for 5 seconds, which will also prolong our survivability. At this point, our goal is to continue minimizing incoming damage while trying to get into a good position above or below the Valkyrie so that we can fire at its large top or bottom profiles. So after completing some corkscrews, we try to rotate down the side of it to put ourselves in our kill position. We line up the shot and dump a mag into them for the kill. That only leaves the Hurricane, and this ship is about to teach us a valuable lesson about the AI in 316. We lock them up and go to fly below them as they joust us, but they vaporize us. The AI will fly into you a lot more in 316, so you have to be careful. So for the fit, I'm going fixed repeaters instead of cannons now, because VHRTs can often contain light fighters, and repeaters will make it easier to hit and dispatch light fighters and Hurricanes, which are the trickier targets to deal with. All laser repeaters in the same size are the same, so I've gone with the CF series repeaters since they're the cheapest. You could go gimbaled size 2s if you want, but the DPS loss is large enough that I prefer the size 3s. You can't change the missile racks on the Defender, but you can change the missiles, so I recommend the Dominator EM missiles, since most ships have large EM signatures. For shields, upgrade them to grade A shields to get more health and recharge rate. All size 2 grade A shields are the same, so just get the civilian ones since they're the cheapest. You don't need to touch the power plants or the coolers, and I'd keep the default quantum drive since it's fast and can get around the verse on a single tank. But if you wanted to get a few seconds faster on the long warps, you could upgrade to the grade A military drive for 43k. So the Banu Defender is a pretty good ship for VHRT bounties in 316. It has really good acceleration and decent agility, so it's pretty responsive in space and atmosphere with good transversal and angular acceleration. It's got good DPS with 15% more sustained DPS than an arrow. Sure, you're not as maneuverable, but with some practice and good piloting, you're maneuverable enough to keep your target where you want them. It has a size 2 shield, which gives it more than double the shields of other medium fighters. It has a gigantic quantum fuel tank for a ship this size, so you can fit the faster military quantum drives, which it comes with by default, and still get around Stanton without refueling. It has an interior with a bed, so it comes with personal storage inventory, so it's a decent ship for bunker missions too. And since it has a ramp, you can use it as a mini ambulance and drag injured players inside to safety. The downsides are that you're pretty large with a big top and bottom profile, so you can take a lot of damage if there are high DPS enemies that you can't quickly separate and take out. A size 2 shield has 50% slower shield recharge rate than size 1 shields. That combined with the fact that there's more shield HP to begin with means that you'll have to disengage for a while if you need to recharge your shields, which will also let your enemy recharge theirs if you don't time it between enemies. You only have 4 size 2 missiles and can't change your missile racks to get more, but it is good for one-shotting a Hurricane if you get a dangerous bounty spawn. You've got big Banu crab claws blocking a lot of your cockpit view, and your headlights suck and light your claws, which makes it harder to see things in the dark. You can work around this though by keeping your lights off and pinging your scan more often, which is how I've started to deal with it. And lastly, if you take critical damage and lose one of your claws, you can't fully repair your ship. If you do, they'll charge you the money and bring back the body of the claw, but the thrusters don't come back until you claim the ship. Since I base out of Grim Hex, I deal with this by landing on the pads outside of the medical facility, and then just walking inside the airlock and claiming the ship. Even with these downsides, I still think this is a good ship for folks that want a more maneuverable combat ship than certain other OP heavy fighters. I've done tons of missions in it, and even though it's not the absolute best ship for the job, I still think it excels and it's really fun to fly, so I'm going to keep using it. That's all for the Banu Defender, folks. Thanks for watching. I hope you've liked this video. Cheers.